Today I have 3 Thanksgiving leftover recipes I'd like to share with you. Our first one is a breakfast favorite, loaded mashed potato pancakes with a fried egg on top. What a great way to use up those extra mashed potatoes from the previous day. First thing we're going to do is cook up 5 strips of bacon. Leftover turkey or ham would be a great substitute too. Next we're going to chop up 1 green onion and 2 garlic cloves. To a hot pan with some melted butter, we're going to cook up our green onions and garlic until the garlic is mostly done, and then we're going to move it to a big mixing bowl. We're going to chop up our bacon and then add it to our green onions and garlic. Next, toss in about 2 cups of mashed potatoes, 1 cup of shredded cheddar, half a cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of pepper, and 2 eggs. Mix everything together. We're going to scoop about 1/4 of a cup of our potato mixture and form it into a ball with our hands. It'll be very wet and semi-messy sticky, but take your ball and place it on a hot pan over medium heat with some melted butter. Take your pancake flipper and flatten your potato ball until it's about 1/2 inch thick. Let it cook for about 3 minutes before flipping it over. It's done when each side is nice and golden brown. This recipe makes about 10 potato cakes. All that's left is to fry up an egg and place it on top. This is my hubby's favorite way of eating his breakfast egg. And there you have it, a delicious breakfast that uses up Thanksgiving's leftover mashed potatoes. For our second leftover recipe, we have this beautiful crescent ring filled with all of yesterday's hard work. Grab all of your Thanksgiving leftovers. For my family, I had leftover cornbread dressing, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, turkey, and I'm going to top all of this with some Munster cheese. First thing we're going to do is open up our crescent rolls and lay everything out in a circle. From here you simply layer in your leftovers, starting with your mashed potatoes, your cornbread dressing, turkey, and then top it off with some Munster cheese and the cranberry sauce. Once you have all of your layers, we're going to take our crescent roll and gently fold it over and tuck it under the inside of our ring. Then we're going to brush the crescent rolls with some melted butter and pop it into the oven at 375 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how golden you want that crust. If your relatives are staying over, this is a great meal to put together for everyone. All you have to do is assemble, since everything else minus the crescent roll is already cooked. If you have leftover cranberry sauce, this might be the recipe for you. We're going to start off with 1/3 of a cup of melted butter, add in 1 cup of sugar, 2 eggs, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Mix everything until combined. Next we're going to add in 1½ cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and the recipe says to slowly add in about 1/2 cup of milk as you mix. I tried that, but I ended up dumping in the rest of the milk. This girl doesn't have time for that. Don't forget to scrape down the sides of your bowl. Now we're going to butter and flour our 8x4 inch loaf pan. I'm taking an extra measure and putting in some parchment paper just in case. You're going to see me layer on the batter and then the cranberry sauce and so on until I run out of the batter. Naturally, the big chunks of cranberries will gravitate towards the bottom of the pan because they're heavy. Normally, you would coat the whole berries in flour so they won't sink, so like blueberries, cranberries, raspberries, whatever kind of berry you use, or cherries even, you would coat those in flour before putting it into the batter. But since this is cranberry sauce, we can't really do that here. But it's totally fine. It still comes out beautiful, and only the big chunks start to sink a little bit. The smaller chunks seem to have stayed where we put them, and the flavor was still spot on. The recipe says to cook this at 350 degrees for 50 to 60 minutes. I checked it at 50, but put it back in the oven for the full 60 minutes. After it's done in the oven, the recipe says to leave it alone for 40 minutes. What torture, right? Here it is, completely cooled and ready to go. It's so pretty. Ooh, look, a sample. Now we're going to whip up some icing. To the bowl, we're going to add in 2 cups of powdered sugar, a splash of vanilla, and 1/3 of a cup of milk. Depending on how thick or thin you want your icing, either use a little bit more or a little bit less than 1/3 of a cup. I know the icing looks thick, but even though we waited 40 minutes for the loaf to cool, it's still a tiny bit warm on the inside. Just enough to move the icing along to help it drip over the edges. Now we're going to top it with some roughly chopped up dried cranberries and add a nice melted chocolate drizzle to complete the loaf. Here we have some Ghirardelli melting candies. Microwave it for about 1 minute, stirring every 15 seconds. We're ready to go. Simply put it in a piping bag or gallon Ziploc bag and drizzle it over your loaf like so. And there you have it. If you're interested in these recipes, I did find them on Pinterest, and I'll leave a link to each one in the description box below with any adaptations I made. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and if you liked this video and like to see more, please like and subscribe to my channel.